Alors, bienvenue, welcome, à cette séance d'information sur les perspectives de carrière en traduction juridique. Il sera question dans un premier temps des carrières dans ce domaine et plus largement dans le marché actuel de la jurilinguistique au Canada. Et dans un deuxième temps aussi du programme d'études supérieures en traduction juridique offert à l'École d'éducation permanente à l'Université McGill, donc de son contenu, des exigences d'admission et de quelques informations importantes, notamment le fait que ce programme a été développé spécifiquement pour répondre aux besoins du marché. Donc, il a été développé avec l'industrie, pour répondre aux besoins canadiens, dans le contexte canadien. My presentation will last more or less 30 minutes. It will be followed by a period of question. Unfortunately, you cannot turn on your camera or your microphone, but you can communicate with us in the chat or in the Q&A section. I may answer your question during this presentation, so if you can wait until the end of the presentation to ask your question, but otherwise you can also communicate right away with us in the chat. Please feel free to communicate in English or in French. Alors, mon nom est Marie-Hélène Girard, je suis professeure adjointe et responsable à l'enseignement dans le programme d'éducation supérieure en traduction juridique ici à McGill et je suis accompagnée aujourd'hui de Brian Jim, Administrative and Student Affairs Coordinator in the Translation Study Program. Vous avez nos coordonnées ici à l'écran. Si jamais vous avez des questions ou si vous voulez continuer la discussion après cette présentation, des discussions plus par rapport à votre situation personnelle, n'hésitez pas à nous écrire. Donc, vous pouvez m'écrire pour toute question concernant l'enseignement, le programme, l'industrie, etc. Et si vos questions sont plutôt administratives, je vous invite à communiquer avec Brian Jim. Si vous ne savez pas à qui écrire, ben, écrivez-nous aux deux. On va répondre à vos questions sans problème. Okay, alors commençons. Let's start with an overview of legal translation as a profession. The result I will be presenting on the next few slides are based on the research that was performed in 2016, result of research on the language industry in Canada. It's from 2016, but we performed last year a survey amongst the industry of jury-linguistic at large in Canada, and the results have not been published yet. It will be published soon, so stay tuned. It will be published on the page of the school, and the result of the study points to the same results. So the situation has remained the same since 2016. The situation is that there's a steady increase in demand in certain key sectors for legal, for translation in general, but more specifically, we're concerned with legal translation here. So as you may know, legal translation is a subfield, but within legal translation, there's more subfields. There's translators specialized in translating different type of text, for example, judgment or securities law, and there's other that are specialized in field, for example, family law or criminal law, etc. And there's a steady increase in demand, not only because there's more demand for legal translation, there's more text being written that need translation, but also because there's a shortage of qualified professionals on the horizon because the baby boomers are retiring from the workplace. And in the survey we did last year, there was a question about the current challenges of the industry, and one of the main challenge is recruiting qualified professional. There's also the problem of senior legal translator. Because of the shortage, the professional qualified legal translator, they're in such a demand that they are unable to mentor, coach, and revise junior colleagues. So that's the situation of legal translation as a profession in Canada. There was another survey in 2016 with language service provider, and a third of them identify legal translation as an expanding area of expertise. So amongst all type of subfield in translation, legal translation was one that was forcing to have to expand over the next few years. In that survey, they also projected a job growth in Canada for translators, terminologists, and interpreters in all fields. So not just in legal translation, in all fields, but that includes legal translation, of course. And just a word on the impact of COVID-19. There has been an increased need for qualified translator, legal translator in that context, because we've seen that there was a need for drafting more policies and amending different legal document, contracts, laws, rules, etc. So during COVID, there was an increased need for that sort of specialty. Now we see that it's stabilizing, but the shortage remains, so there's still a huge need for legal translators. Here we have two lists. The first one is a career prospect. So legal translation and this program, like learning about legal translation and becoming legal translator, is a mean and not an end. So through learning legal translation, you learn how to navigate with both official languages and with both legal system in Canada, meaning with our 4 legal language. So through translation, you're learning that, but it doesn't mean it's an end. As you see in the first list, specialized translator is the last prospect in the list, but there's many other prospects, including becoming a jury linguist, which is then how we designate language specialist at the Supreme Court of Canada, for example, or Justice Canada. You can also use legal translation to become a lawyer linguist, lawyer revisor, legal editors, and so on. And as far as potential employers are concerned, there's job in a private sector, in a public sector. You can also work for yourself as a freelancer. So there's different type of workplace for all taste, if I may say. Now that you know that legal translation is in demand, you all know that if by taking this program, there's work for you. And now the next question you probably have is, okay, but now what do I need to be a good legal translator? Based on a study by Prieto Ramos in 2011, there's 5 macro competencies, and that's what we based our program on when we developed the program. Of course, they're subdivided in specific learning outcomes within each courses of the program, but we'll start with these 5 macro competencies, and then I'll present the program later on. So the first one is thematic and cultural competency. Before you can even consider translating in a legal field, you need to understand the law, and you need to understand the law in which you work and translate. So that's a basic knowledge of the law. Second, you need the communicative and textual competency. So that's one thing, to know the law and to understand that text you're reading and that needs translation. But if you don't know how to write and how to write the law and write in such a way that respects the spirit of legal system, you're lacking another fundamental competencies. And this is probably the hardest one, because most people think they can write, and yes, we can all write, but we don't all have the skill to write in a professional manner. So in a way, for example, in a legal context, that convey the entire message, including all the tones and everything that is not said, for example. So those are the fundamental competencies we focus on in a program. And further in this presentation, I will talk about the requirements to be admitted in the program. Our students come from both the translation field and law field. And so for the student coming from the translation field, we will focus on acquiring the knowledge. And for the student that come from the law field, we focus on the second competency, communicative and textual, so writing skill. And then we move on to the next skill, the instrumental competencies, which mean knowledge of specialized sources, information and terminology management, use of parallel documents, application of computer tools to translation. As you may know, there's no one fit for all purpose resources for translation. You cannot use only one dictionary for translation. It's the same for legal translation. There's no one resources for all contexts. Quite the opposite. There's many resources, many good, many less good, and many that are focused on specific contexts. So through this program, you will learn how to navigate, how to evaluate, how to choose your resources for a given text in a given context. The program also focuses on the use of technology. For example, we'll have a course on computer-aided translation terminology. For those who work in the translation field already, you may already use translation tools, but this course is a bit more advanced. It doesn't focus on teaching you how to use the tool, but rather how to manage it and how to being able to assess different tools and to choose one that is more adequate in a specific workplace or work context. And then we have the fourth competency, which is methodological competency, and this comprises the rest. So we have the fundament, the three first competencies are the fundaments, and then the methodological one is where we start applying it to transfer, to translation. So this skill controls the application of the other one and comprises analysis of translation briefs, analysis of the context, identification of problems, implementation of transfer strategies, translation procedures, self-assessment, quality control, and so on. So you will learn how to translate, taking into account all the knowledge available and producing a translation that is adequate in a target culture and target language, and also produce desired effects. That's probably one of the main specificity of legal language and legal translation. The text has legal effect, so we want to produce a desired effect. We want to reproduce that. And finally, we have interpersonal competencies. So it relates to teamwork, interaction with clients and other professionals, knowledge of legal framework for professional practice, and deontological aspects. So our program is based on these five core skills. And let me now present this program. Alors, c'est un diplôme d'études supérieures en traduction juridique. Comme je l'ai mentionné plus tôt, il a été conçu pour répondre à la demande du marché de la traduction juridique au Canada. Donc, il a été développé avec l'industrie et même avec le financement de l'industrie, plus spécifiquement de Justice Canada. C'est un programme de 30 crédits qui peut être complété en aussi peu que 2 ans. Donc, ce n'est pas possible de le suivre en une année. Je sais que normalement, dans un programme, on peut suivre 15 crédits par session, mais comme le programme est offert à temps partiel et le soir, ce n'est pas possible de prendre 5 cours par session. Par contre, si vous suivez 2 cours chaque session, automne, hiver et été, c'est possible de terminer le programme en 2 ans. Le programme a été conçu pour être offert entièrement en ligne. Donc, déjà, même avant le contexte de la COVID, on avait commencé à travailler avec toute une équipe de technopédagogues pour concevoir les cours en ligne. Et on s'appuie sur la méthode de la classe inversée. Donc, tout ce qui peut être fait individuellement, les lectures, par exemple, sont faites individuellement pendant des séances asynchrones. Et on se sert des séances synchrones en ligne pour l'application, pour des activités de toutes sortes. Donc, voilà, c'est un programme en ligne. Et la raison pour laquelle c'est un programme en ligne principalement, c'est parce que justement, c'est financé par Justice Canada dans le but d'améliorer l'accès à la justice dans les 2 langues officielles et ce, partout au Canada. Donc, on voulait rejoindre nos étudiants où ils sont plutôt que de les faire venir ici à McGill en personne. Les cours sont donnés par des personnes qui sont reconnues pour leur expertise dans le domaine et pour la matière qu'ils enseignent. On met aussi l'accent sur les technologies et sur les occasions de réseautage, ce dès le début du programme. Donc, ce n'est pas parce qu'on est en ligne que vous êtes isolé. Au contraire, on intègre l'industrie dans nos cours, soit par des personnes de l'industrie qui enseignent, mais aussi par des conférences, des activités ou autres. Alors, vous allez voir, le monde de la jury linguistique, c'est un petit monde au Canada et on se connaît tous. Donc, on met beaucoup l'accent là-dessus dès le début du programme. Je vais maintenant le présenter, ce programme, donc son contenu. Il y a 4 cours de base. Les 2 cours préalables sont le cours Principes de jury linguistique et Traduction juridique, Introduction à la traduction juridique. Dans le cours de Principes de jury linguistique, on fait tout sauf de la traduction. Alors, pour ceux qui ne savent pas, la jury linguistique, c'est tout traitement linguistique appliqué au texte juridique. Donc, dans ce cours-là, on va faire de la conceptualisation, on va faire de la négociation, on va faire de la rédaction unipartite, multipartite, on va faire de la co-rédaction, de l'interprétation des lois, du droit comparé même. Alors, on va faire tout ça sauf de la traduction. Alors, on va suivre finalement le mouvement de l'édification du sens dans un texte de loi et on va voir les obstacles qui interviennent dans chacune de ces différentes facettes de la jury linguistique. Alors, comme je l'expliquais au début, la traduction, c'est un moyen, mais pas une fin. On peut utiliser la traduction pour faire autre chose aussi, de la révision, de la rédaction, par exemple, dans le domaine juridique, évidemment. Ensuite, le cours d'introduction à la traduction juridique est divisé en 2 parties. C'est une petite particularité. Normalement, les cours de traduction, ça correspond à la combinaison linguistique, donc soit vers l'anglais, de l'anglais vers le français ou français vers l'anglais. Mais ce cours est divisé en 2. Dans la première partie, tous les étudiants traduisent vers l'anglais. Dans la deuxième, tous les étudiants traduisent vers le français, peu importe votre combinaison linguistique. Alors, on regroupe vraiment les 2 communautés linguistiques dans ce cours. On a aussi un cours d'introduction aux technologies langagières, comme j'en ai parlé tantôt, et un cours de gestion des langues dans le secteur de la justice. Ensuite, on a les filières. Alors, c'est vraiment ici où vous allez choisir votre filière, donc votre combinaison linguistique, soit vers le français ou soit vers l'anglais. Si vous ne le savez pas encore, ben, le cours Legal Translation General va vous aider à prendre une décision par rapport à votre filière. Dans ces 2 filières, on a les mêmes sujets, donc jugement, contrat, loi et règlement, valeurs mobilières, sauf que le contenu des cours est vraiment adapté aux combinaisons linguistiques et au contexte dans lequel on traduit ces textes. Je vous donne un exemple, le cours de loi et règlement vers l'anglais. C'est un secteur très niche. On traduit principalement des lois et règlements vers l'anglais à l'Assemblée nationale du Québec. Donc, le cours a été développé par des traductrices de l'Assemblée nationale en collaboration avec l'Assemblée nationale et il est offert par l'Assemblée nationale aussi. En revanche, le cours traduction des lois et règlements vers le français, on a beaucoup plus de contexte dans lequel on traduit ces types de textes dans cette combinaison linguistique au Canada, par exemple en Ontario, Nouveau-Brunswick, Manitoba, Yukon. Alors, on va brosser beaucoup plus large dans le cours vers le français. Ensuite, à la toute fin du programme, il y a un capstone ou on l'appelle aussi le practicum ou plus communément le stage. Et ici, vous aurez l'occasion soit de faire un stage en traduction pour ceux qui s'orientent vers la carrière en traduction, mais pour ceux qui voudraient faire autre chose aussi que la traduction, on a un projet appliqué. Alors ici, il est possible de faire tout sauf de la traduction. Par exemple, des projets de terminologie ou des projets de recherche sur des questions liées aux langues officielles, aux langues autochtones, ou au bilinguisme, etc. Donc, il y a possibilité de faire autre chose que de la traduction aussi dans ce programme. Même des projets de rédaction aussi, de légistique, etc. Et finalement, ben, on complète avec 2 cours complémentaires, un total de 6 crédits. Il est possible de faire un petit projet de recherche personnelle aussi en partenariat avec, sous la supervision d'un professeur. On a aussi le cours Special Topics in Legal Translation. Donc, le sujet change à chaque année, chaque session. Possiblement qu'à l'automne, on aura un cours sur le disinformation and misinformation and fake news donné par un juriste. Donc appliqué spécifiquement au domaine du droit. À l'hiver, on aura possiblement un cours sur Business Ethics and AI, aussi axé sur le domaine de la traduction en général. Sinon, on a aussi des sujets comme introduction au droit pour non-juristes, introduction à la traduction pour non-traducteurs, la rédaction claire, la communication non verbale dans les tribunaux. Alors, ce sont des sujets qu'on offre en rotation. Sinon, vous pouvez aussi suivre d'autres cours offerts à McGill ou dans d'autres universités qui sont pertinents selon vos objectifs professionnels et personnels, pourvu que ce soit des cours de 3 crédits de niveau maîtrise. Et vous pouvez aussi compléter par des cours de l'autre filière ou des cours de votre filière que vous n'aurez en plus des 6 crédits que vous devez faire dans cette filière. Je montre ici quelques exemples de nos partenaires, partenaires canadiens évidemment. Ce sont des partenaires qui vont soit avec lesquels on a collaboré, soit pour développer les cours et donner les cours, ou ce sont des personnes qui participent activement aux cours, soit en venant faire des conférences chaque fois qu'on donne les cours, ou encore des personnes qui accueillent nos stagiaires. Donc, c'est juste un petit échantillon de nos partenaires. Et je vous montre ici un échantillon aussi de nos chargés de cours. Donc, vraiment pour vous montrer que ce sont des personnes qui pratiquent. Par exemple, on a Vera Roy et Lynn Gelette qui enseignent toutes les deux la traduction des jugements, une vers l'anglais, l'autre vers le français, et qui travaillent au quotidien, qui traduisent des jugements au quotidien. On a aussi nos 2 traductrices de l'Assemblée nationale, Mary Baker et Amanda Abbott. Et on a aussi d'autres spécialistes dans leur domaine comme Sabine Biassi et Arnaud qui sont spécialistes de la traduction des contrats. Arnaud aussi de la traduction des valeurs mobilières. On a aussi Jennifer Drouin d'Éducalois qui enseigne le cours d'introduction au droit pour non-juristes, etc. Donc, c'est juste un échantillon. On a d'autres personnes qui se sont joints aussi à notre équipe récemment. Mais ça vous donne une idée des personnes qui enseignent les cours. Okay, we can now move on to the period of questions. It's not the first time we do this presentation or that sort of presentation, and there's questions that are frequent, and so we decided to answer this question right away before you ask them. But if our answer is not complete or not clear, please feel free to ask your question in the Q&A and in the chat. So the first question is, what are the admission criteria? The very first admission criteria is to complete and pass the online entrance examination. Brian Jim will be providing the link to register for the exam in the chat. The link will also be provided in this PowerPoint that you will be receiving after this presentation tomorrow or the day after. So that's the first condition. The second one is to hold an undergraduate or graduate diploma or equivalent in translation, law, or related discipline. The third one is a minimum CGPA of 3/4, but there are exceptions. For example, if you work for the Federal Bureau of Translation, you do not have to take the entrance examination. You can apply right away. Another exemption is concern the related discipline. So for example, if you do not have a degree in translation or in law, you might still have the experience or the level required to succeed in the program. So you can still apply, and we encourage you to do so. You will receive an email then from our admission center, and they will require an additional documentation such as a CV, letter of presentation, and letter of recommendation. And based on that, the admission committee will assess whether or not you have the requirement to succeed in the program. We don't want to admit student just to admit student. We want to make sure that you will succeed and you have what's necessary to complete the program. And another exception, for example, in relation to the CGPA, if your CGPA is lower, you can still apply to the program. Again, we will require you to submit additional documentation, your CV, letter of presentation, and letter of recommendation, and then the committee will assess your situation. For example, you might explain to us in your letter of presentation that you have done your undergraduate, you've received your undergraduate degree 20 years ago when you were 18 years old and not really motivated. But then since then, you have 10, 15 years experience in translation or in law or in an environment, related environment. And you have outstanding letter of reference, and so the committee might admit you into the program. Another question, how do I apply to the program? So first of all, complete and pass the entrance examination. The next period will be from March 28 to April 28. There's a cost, $28.94. I encourage you, if you think you will be taking the exam, I encourage you to go and register now, because you won't be able to do the exam when you register. There's a delay between registering and receiving the link to take the exam. So you cannot just say, okay, today I'm doing the exam, and pay for the fee and then do the exam right away. So if you're thinking of doing the exam, I encourage you to go register right away. Again, Brian Jim provided the link in the chat. And submit your application. Again, the link is here. Brian Jim will provide it in the chat. There's a few steps when you apply. So there's first you have to fill out the form. And then someone from the admission center will contact you by email to let you know what are the required documents that you need to send. So for example, if you don't have the minimum CGPA, they will ask for additional documentation. If you meet all the requirements, they will only ask for the basic, which is your transcript and so on. So that's how to apply. Another question is, what is the entrance examination? So the examination is a 3 hours exam. It consists of 2 parts. In the first part, you will have to read 2 texts, one in French and one in English, and produce a synthesis of these 2 in either French or English in approximately 300 words. This first part is worth 70% of the exam, so I encourage you to write that part in your dominant language. And this is a synthesis. It is not a translation. Do not translate part of the text. We want you to read both texts and do a synthesis. In the second part, with reference to the text cited in part 1, you will have to write in either French or English, whichever was not used in part 1. So if you wrote the first part in French, you have to write the second part in English. So you will have to write an opinion piece of approximately 300 words. So based on the first text, you'll be provided with a few questions. You choose a question and you write an opinion piece in the other language, approximately 300 words. Again, do not translate the texts that are provided. We want an opinion piece. So as you can see, this is not a translation test. This is a test in which we want to assess your analytical and writing skills. Another question, do you offer other language combinations? Unfortunately, no. The program has been designed to meet the Canadian market needs and has been funded by Justice Canada to this aim. And as such, the program is only offered in both combination English, French, and French in English. And you do need to pass both sections of the test, so in French and in English, to be admitted in the program. That said, the skills that you will require are transferable to other context, national context, international context, and so on. Last question, what are the tuition fees? So to find out about the tuition fees, you can go to the online distance programs page. Again, Brian will provide the link in the chat. And then on that page, you click on the category that applies to you. So I will open up the page just to show you. I know it's a bit confusing. So here you see the continuing study fees for 2021-2022. This is an online program, so you click on online program, and then if you scroll down, you see here that there's 2 categories. Whether you're a student studying from within Quebec or a student studying from outside Quebec. If you study from outside Quebec, the fees below apply. If you study from within Quebec, then you can click on the category that applies to you. So whether you're a Quebec student, non-Quebec Canadian student, or international student. I know it's a bit confusing. And so if you have question with your specific situation, please contact Brian Jim after this presentation. Just call him or email him, and he'll be able to answer specific question about your specific situation. So we're now ready to take your question, but before I would like to thank you for your attention, and please follow us, follow the McGill School of Continuing Study on Facebook and LinkedIn, so you're informed of all the activities and research we do, and next period of examination, if you're not ready quite yet to apply, but you want to be informed of the next period, so please follow us. There's also a LinkedIn for the student and a Facebook account for the student of the program. If you have any questions, again, please email us. Our email are here again, myself or Brian Jim. And I do have virtual office hours as well. The link and the schedule change every semester, so I haven't, it's not here. I invite you to click on the link, and then on the site, McGill site, you will see my hours, my virtual office hours, and a link. There's a Zoom link. Simply click on the link during these hours. There's a waiting room, and when I'm free, I will let you into the room. No need to make an appointment. Just click on the link, and I can answer all your questions. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen. And please, Brian, can you take the question, read the question?
Hello, everyone. Right now, we're just looking at the chat. I've answered some of the questions during the presentation, so all of those were answered. And here's a new one. Has this program run in the past? Are there opportunities to connect with those who have taken the course about their career path after receiving a diploma? Marie-Hélène, would you like to tackle that question?
Yes, of course. Thank you for your question. This program has been previously offered as a graduate certificate. It was a 15 credit courses offered in person at McGill, but 15 credit courses was not quite enough. There was only 1 or 2 translation courses, and it was not enough to really be qualified to and productive right away in the industry. And so we transformed that into a graduate diploma. The graduate diploma, we started offering the graduate diploma last September 20, 2020, right, Brian? 2020, 2 years ago during COVID, we started offering the graduate diploma. And all the students from the graduate certificate transferred to the graduate diploma because they really felt that there was a need for more courses before they felt confident as legal translators. So they all moved on to the graduate diploma. And as I mentioned in this presentation, you cannot complete the program earlier than in 2 years. So we're now having our first graduate. They're finishing their semester now with their practicum. So we do not have a graduate from this new graduate diploma in legal translation. They're currently graduating, but we don't have graduates yet. At the end of the semester, we will, but not yet. That said, you can connect with them. They have a Facebook page. It's run by the student for the student, and you can ask all your questions there. Just Google it. I don't have the link, Andy, but you can contact me. You can email me. I'll provide you with the Facebook link. And the students are quite active, and they answer each other questions. So please feel free to connect with current students. Are there opportunities to connect with those? And just so you know, those who are doing their practicum at the moment, they're doing their practicum exactly where they wanted to do their practicum, and with the possibility of being hired by these partners afterwards. So we really work in the practicum, and from the beginning of the program, I really work with you in order to achieve your goal, professional goal. Most of the students, they come in this program with a specific idea of what they want to do afterwards, and it's important that you communicate that to us so that we find a practicum that really helps you achieve these goals, and possibly a practicum in a workplace that you will integrate afterwards as an employee. So I hope I answered your question, Adriana. Thank you for asking. Any other question, Brian?
Yes, there was just one that came in just now. I'll read it out. Are there any specific criteria for French and/or English language competency? Is a percentage of the points awarded for the entrance exam reserved for quality of language? That for sure is yes. And Marie-Hélène, maybe you can elaborate on how the entrance exam is assessed and how it's evaluated.
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail into the criteria, but as I mentioned before, we focus on analytical and writing skills. So of course, the quality of the language is important, specifically in your dominant language. So the dominant language will be assessed in the first part. It's worth 70%. So we recognize that you might not have the same level or writing skill in the second language. That's why the second part is worth less than the first one. So yeah, the first part is worth 70%, the second part 30%.
Here's another question. When does the live instruction typically take place? The live, of course, online face-to-face meetings. I just replied in the chat and I wrote evenings, but Marie-Hélène, if you have anything else about that, please do.
Yes, so when there is live session, they are at night. All courses are offered at night because our students are full-time professional for most of them, and they have family, etc. So it's always nighttime from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So evening, and it's a Montreal time. So we try to accommodate also people that may be in Manitoba or in the West. So they might have to come to class at 3 p.m. It's going to be 3 p.m. for them. But yeah, so the class are offered at from 6 to 9.
Wonderful, thank you. There's one more question for those that happen to arrive a little late. The question was actually answered during the presentation, but we can just answer it now. The question is, how can I register/apply to the program, and how long does it take to complete? Registration doesn't happen yet because you're supposed to apply to the program first. While you apply to the program, you also register for the entrance exam. As far as how long it takes to complete, the program can be taken on a part-time basis in approximately 2 years. And courses take place during the evening. Quick note for those of you who happen to join late, please do note that this PowerPoint presentation will be sent to all the attendees, which of course the info is there, and the links inside the PowerPoint will be there for you as well in case you didn't catch what we've been discussing in the chat.
And the recording will be available too. Will
Yes.
be sent to you. A link will be sent to you, and the recording will be available on our site.
Here's a question. Is it also possible to do the program over 3 years? And the answer, of course, is yes.
Yes. So it's possible to do the program between 2 and 4 years. So 2 is the minimum. You cannot do it faster than 2 years because we don't offer. It's a evening class. You cannot take 5 classes per semester, and there's prerequisite as well. So you cannot do the advanced courses at the same time than you do principle of Juridic Linguistic or legal translation general. So you start with these basic and then you advance to more advanced courses. So minimum is 2 years if you take 2 courses per semester, including in the summer. So fall, winter, summer. And the maximum is 4 years. So yes, it's possible to do it over 3 years. Maximum is 4 years, but there are exceptions again. For example, if you were sick or you had maternity leave or professional reason to not be able to attend the program during 1 or 2 semesters, then you can extend the duration of the program.
So we have two more questions, so we'll answer them in order. Are the courses only online? That answer would be yes, they are only online. This program was in fact developed to be an online program so that we can offer these courses not only to local students here in Montreal, but to offer it to a wider audience across Canada. Another question here. How long?
Can I wait, Brian? I want to add something. There's a distinction between online and remote. For those who you might not be familiar with the distinction, but online meaning that the course have been developed to be teach online. We have a platform, all the content is there. There's video, there's reading. So it's online, but you also have synchronous classes. So that's an important distinction. It's not something you can self-taught or follow at your own pace. There are semester and there are assigned course lecture and there are a session that you have to log on. So just to make sure it's not a program you sign up anytime and you can follow at your own pace. Their semester, it's like a program at the university, except that we meet online and not in the classroom in person.
Thank you. The next question, how long does it take to receive the results of the entrance exam? That's a good question. We have the next entrance exam period is, I believe, March 28th up until April 28th. I'll start the answer and then Marie-Hélène, perhaps you can finish it. Usually we wait till the end, we wait until the last date of the exam to collect all the exams together during that exam period. And then of course we mark them. And then Marie-Hélène can explain the rest.
We send the results all at the same time. So it depends how many exam we have to correct, but normally we try to send a result between 2 weeks and 4 weeks after the end of the examination period.
Typically, in the last year or so, we've been successfully sending results in approximately two weeks.
Yeah.
But we do have a window of 2 to 4 weeks if needed, depending on how many exams we have. Oh, and this is a question for Marie-Hélène, because you would know the details about this. The question is, what are the career perspectives after the completion?
So as I mentioned in the presentation before, there's many prospects. Legal translation is a mean and not an end. It's a mean to learn how to navigate with both legal system and both official languages and the 4 legal language in Canada. So you're using legal translation to become aware of the distinction and how it plays. And but it's not an end. You can become a legal translator if you want to, if that's your goal, but there's also other prospects such as being a plain language specialist or reviser, editor, all that in the field of law, of course. And I can tell you that I'm receiving, I showed a list of partners that we have, but every week I receive email from the industry, from law firms, from the different language services provider across Canada, Ministry of Justice, who are looking to hire my student. They want information on how they can have not only stagiaires but employees, and if I have recommendation for them. So there is a demand.
Thank you. There's another question here. Do we need to let the school know if we are based in Quebec and at some point during the 2 years during the study, if we move out of Quebec? The short answer to that is administratively, I'll answer this question. The short answer to that is yes. This affects your enrollment status, and primarily it affects the tuition fees that you pay, whether you're based here in Quebec or whether you're living outside Quebec. So the short answer to that is yes. If you do change your location of study, then you will need to know. You will need to let us know that when you move.
There was a question from Jeremy Mondor. Have you replied, Brian?
Let's check.
What if you have a degree from outside Quebec, so no CGPA?
Okay, so I'll cover that question. I did answer that, but I'll answer that for everyone since the question is, if you have a degree from outside Quebec, or for that matter, not in Canada, international degrees, the answer is there are degree equivalencies that we have when we assess international degrees that are outside Quebec, outside Canada, and outside the States for that matter, that have a different marking rubric. We have those equivalencies. So even if you don't have the standard CGPA, cumulative grade point average breakdown in your transcripts, for example, if it comes from a transcript in Europe, we will have those equivalencies when you submit your transcripts for us to evaluate whether you're at that upper echelon of 3.0 over 4 or not.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? There's a question from Michel Vallée. Are all courses offered each semester? No, they're not. We offer between 3 and 5 courses each semester, depending on the semester. For example, there's less courses offered during the summer. But yeah, we roll the courses. For example, laws and regulation is normally offered in the fall, and contracts in the winter, and judgment in the summer, and then we start over. But we do make sure that there's always a course that each student can take at every semester.
Marie-Hélène, can I add something to that as well?
Yes, of course.
On an administrative basis, one of the reasons why the program is part-time is because we don't offer all the courses all at once every term. So the way we've actually designed the schedule is that for all entries, admissions in the fall or the winter, depending on what term you start, students will then be able to complete courses regularly each term. And what I want to mention is, for those of you who have professional or personal commitments and you have to take, for whatever reason, you have to be away for 1 semester or maybe 2 semesters up to a year, and you miss those courses that are offered. If you miss courses that are prerequisites for other courses, it does entail that it does mean that your timeline is set back from anywhere from 6 months to up to a year, because you have to wait for that prerequisite course to be offered. For example, if it's only offered in the winter, you have to wait for that course to be offered again in the winter before you continue. So that's why we highly encourage students to take courses regularly as much as possible. As soon as you're available and you know you can continue and take courses, we highly encourage students to register each term during their study.
Avez-vous d'autres questions? Alors, s'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, je vais vous laisser retourner à votre heure de dîner. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. Et si jamais vous avez d'autres questions qui vous viennent cet après-midi, cette semaine, le mois prochain, n'hésitez pas à nous écrire. On est toujours là pour vous répondre, que ce soit pour le programme ou sur la traduction juridique en général. On est toujours très content d'en discuter avec vous. Alors, merci beaucoup et bonne fin de journée.
Thank you, everyone.